Today we're going to start 11.6, circumference of a circle. Does anyone think they might know what the word circumference means? What do you think? It's not a circle of a circle.
The measurements in a circle.
Not the measurements inside of a circle.
The measurements of a circle.
From the center to the outside.
The circumference is exactly like perimeter when we found perimeter before. So what do you think circumference means?
The outside.
It is measuring the outside of a circle. That's what it means, okay? All right, here's a few terms I want you to go ahead and write down for me today. All right, so there's a few terms that I want us to know. The first one is radius. Read to me what the radius is. The distance from the center to any point on a circle. Okay, so really it is finding right here, that center point right there. And as you can see, they went right there. But you could have done many different places. I could have said that this right here was the radius, or I could have said this was the radius. It's simply just the distance from the center to any point on the circle. Okay, next one is diameter. Everyone say diameter. The diameter is the distance across a circle through the center. So it's going all the way across. Could we have a diameter somewhere other than just right there?
Yes.
Yeah, where else could it be?
Going up and down.
It could go straight up and down right there. Where else could it be?
It could be right where
It could be a diagonal. Okay, that could also have been the diameter. Anything it is, it's a distance across a circle through the center. Okay? What do you notice the difference between the radius and the diameter?
Diameter goes all the way across.
Diameter goes all the way across, and radius?
It connects in the middle of
It
the
goes
diameter.
halfway. So what can you gather from that about a radius and diameter?
Diameter
They're
is
team.
the complete area.
A diameter is always going to be double whatever your radius is, or the radius is always going to be half of what the diameter is, okay? Then there's one more thing here, circumference. That's the distance around the circle. So really it's measuring how far around that whole circle is, okay? There's a couple new formulas we're going to memorize. One has to do with diameter and one has to do with the radius. The first one, when finding circumference, is taking pi. Now, how many of you have heard of pi before, okay? Pi is simply a number. What number about is pi, guys?
3.41.
Okay. Pi, which we normally would write with a little squiggle line like that, equals, for the most part, 3.14. It's actually a much longer number that goes on and on and on and on forever. But when we shorten it, a lot of times your instructions will say just use 3.14. So when you're trying to find the circumference, you're going to do 3.14 times the diameter. So let's say that our diameter here had been 10 inches. You would have taken 3.14 and multiplied it by what?
10 inches.
By 10 inches, okay? Instead, if my diameter, if we know it's 10 inches, what's my radius going to be?
5.
It's going to be 5 because it will be exactly half. So here, if I had been given just the radius, you would do 2 times pi times 5. Okay? So we'll talk through that here in just a minute. So my instructions for number 1 are asking us to find the circumference of the circle, or find the distance around this circle. It's given us also specific instructions to use 3.14 for pi. So let's look at this right here. Is that my diameter or my radius? Diameter. How can I tell that's the diameter?
Because it's the thing that goes all the way across.
It's the distance that goes all the way across that circle, okay? So look at your notes to see what is the formula we know we need when finding circumference and we know the diameter.
Pi times
C
D.
equals pi times d. Excellent, okay? So we know we are trying to find the circumference, so drop down your equal sign and your C. When it tells us right here in our instructions to use 3.14 for pi, we're going to go ahead and put 3.14 instead of pi. And do we know what our diameter is? It is 25 centimeters. So now you're simply dropping down your equal sign to find the circumference. What's my circumference? 78.5 centimeters. Should I square the units?
No.
When do I square them?
Area.
Only when finding the area. We're not finding area, we're finding the circumference. Any questions about how to find that one? Pretty simple?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the main thing is being able to identify if it's a diameter or a radius. Okay, skip a line, write this down. when the radius or the diameter of a circle is divisible by 7, you can always use 22 over 7 instead of 3.14 for pi, because that's a little more specific. I want you guys to put 22 over 7 into your calculators to figure out what that would be as a decimal. What was it that you got?
3.42857.
Okay, repeating. So then it's going to keep going on 142857, 142857. So it's going to go on and on and on forever. Okay, that's a very specific number, but we just simply round it to what normally? 3.14. Okay, but if I was to put 22 over 7 or this number in, that's going to be a more specific answer than if I just put in that 3.14, okay? So for this problem, we're going to go ahead and use that 22 over 7 to see if we can figure out what this answers. So it says use 22 over 7 for pi. Looking at what I have inside this circle, does it give me the radius or the diameter?
Radius.
It gives me the radius. So what is the formula when finding circumference when we know the radius?
C equals 2 times pi times r.
C equals 2 pi r. All right? So let's go ahead and work this out. Drop down your equal sign. We know we're trying to find the circumference. 2 times, what do our instructions tell us to use for pi? 22 over 7. And do we know our radius?
Yeah.
Yes, what is it? 21, okay? Because right here it tells us what our radius is. All right, is there anything that I can cross-reduce over there?
Yes.
Yes, what can I reduce?
7.21.
The 7 and the 21. The 7 would become a 1, and the 21 would become
3.
a 3. All right, so now we're basically going to multiply across what our numerator would be. What do you get?
132
Your circumference equals 132 what?
inches.
Inches. All right, so that was just a very specific way by putting 22 over 7 in instead of pi. It means pretty much the same exact thing. It's just not as rounded as when we would put in 3.14. All right, for this problem, we are still trying to find the circumference. It says to use 3.14 for pi. What does it give me? The circumference, does it have the diameter there or the radius? How do we know that's the diameter? Because it goes all the way across, okay? Just the girls, what is the formula I need to do whenever I have the diameter?
C equals pi times d.
Good job. C equals pi times d. Boys, do I know the circumference yet? Not yet. So I'm dropping down my C and my equals. What am I plugging in for the pi? If you look at the instructions, it says to use 3.14 for pi. So we're just going to put 3.14. And do I know my diameter?
Yes.
What is it?
49.
49. So it's just a matter, once again, of plugging in some numbers in order to find the circumference. Kyla, what'd you get?
153.86
Okay, and what units are those?
inches.
Inches. Good job. Thank you for not saying inches squared because we're finding circumference and not the area. Great job. Okay, so for this one, we're almost working backwards. It's asking us to find the diameter and the radius of the circle when we know what the circumference is. So because it asks us to find the diameter first, we're going to go ahead and use the formula we know for finding diameter or finding the circumference when we know the diameter. What is that formula?
C equals pi times d.
Okay, more than just Landon. Everybody, what is it? C equals pi times d. Good job. Thank you, Landon. All right, do I know my circumference?
Yes.
Yes, what is it?
28.26 inches.
28.26 inches. Okay, next up, we're just going to keep the pi there. Now remember, pi is representing a number times d. How do I get d by itself?
You have to divide by pi.
Divide by pi. All right, we know that those two pi's are going to cancel out, and this is going to give us our answer. I want you to look carefully on your calculator to see if you can find the pi button. How many of you were able to find that pi button on your calculator? Okay, so then when you put this into your calculator, 28.26 divided by pi, what do you get?
A long number.
0.99543.
Okay, it's a pretty long number, 8.9954. It goes on and on forever. So let's just round to the nearest whole number. What do we get?
9
9 what?
inches.
9 inches is correct.
So you round to the nearest whole?
We're going to be rounding to the nearest whole number for these ones to find the diameter and the radius, okay? Now, it has asked us not just to find the diameter, but also to find the radius. So what's our formula for finding the radius? C equals
2 times pi times radius.
2 pi r, okay? Once again, we know what our circumference is. So we've got 28.26 equals 2 times pi times r. If I was to come up with a number that pi is, what have we said pi is? 3.14. So let's go ahead instead, and we're going to go ahead and multiply this times 3.14 times r. Is there any work I can do right now to the left of the equal sign? No, it just says 28.26, so I'm going to go ahead and just drop that down. Is there any work that I can do on the right side?
Yes.
What can I do?
Multiply 2 times pi.
Okay, what is 2 times pi?
6.28.
6.28, all right? And then don't forget, drop down the r. Remember, our goal is to get r by itself, so how do I do that?
Divide.
By?
6.28.
Good job. Divide both sides by 6.28 to help us figure out what the radius is. Who can tell me what the radius is? All right, what'd you get? 4.5 inches is correct. All right, now there's a way to check that out to see if it's correct or not. What do we know about the diameter and the radius?
The radius is half.
The radius is always going to be exactly half of the diameter. What is half of 9?
4.
4.5. Is that what we got right there?
Yes.
Excellent job, okay? And then let's say that we had instead figured out this right here and we knew the radius. How do I get the diameter if I know the
You gotta
radius?
multiply that by 2.
You can add itself or you can multiply by 2. Okay, very good. All right, so for the fifth problem, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to do diameter and radius. I'm going to have us find the diameter first, just because it's one less step. We don't have to multiply something times 2. And then all we're going to do is just cut it in half to try to find our radius. So what is the formula I need when I'm using circumference and diameter?
C equals pi times
D.
C equals pi times D. Great job. Do I know my C?
Yes.
What is it?
81.64.
81.64 equals pi times D. How do I get D by itself?
Multiply.
Divide by pi. Okay, we're trying to get rid of the pi, so we have to divide both sides by pi. This cancels out. And then go ahead and stick this into your calculator, and I want you to give me the answer as if it was rounded to the nearest whole number. Okay? 26 what? 26 millimeters. All right, now you can work out just like we did before and do this whole big formula right there to find the radius, or what's a very simple way you could find the radius? Cut it in half. What's half of 26? 13. So we're going to go ahead and say 13 millimeters is the radius. When doing this on your quiz or test, I am totally fine with you just doing that without even showing a bunch of work, okay? That shows me that you understand it means half of what the diameter is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, any questions about how we did that one?
No.
We're going to do one final problem for today. For here, we've got a giant sequoia tree that has a circumference of 998 inches. So if you were to measure that tree and how far around it is, that means it's 998 inches. Okay, now, does anyone know where the sequoia trees are?
No.
Yeah, they're in like Arkansas.
Okay, the biggest ones are out in California, all right? And one time my family actually was able to go through one where you were able to take your car and drive through the middle of a tree. It was that big, okay? For us today, we want to try to figure out what the diameter would be if we had a tree that has circumference of 998 inches. So, Asia, what formula am I going to use to try to find this answer? Good job. C equals pi times D. Katie, what can I plug in?
You plug in the circumference, which would be 998.
Okay, good job. And then just bring down pi times D. And what can I get rid of to get D by itself?
Pi divided on both sides.
Divided by pi on both sides. That cancels out. And then remember, into your calculator, you can stick in 998 divided by pi, which basically means divided by 3.14. Round to the nearest whole number, and what do you get? 318 inches. Remember, because you always want to round with these ones to the nearest whole number. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent job today, guys.